Yiannis, do you hear us?
Yiannis?
Yiannis, we can see you. Yiannis?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so we are all three of us now online.
But I don't see you. Hi, Pavel, I just saw you. Yeah.
Hello.
Good. Great. So we are all here now?
Yes.
I'll turn off my video because I'm the host, so it's like important for me to have a perfect connection. And it seems that video sometimes slows it down.
Okay.
Well,
So,
finally.
yes.
So I'm sorry, it was a bit complicated. I was for a whole month on vacation. Actually, I still am.
Well, Yiannis, thank you for making your time available for us.
It's also for me important and an honor that I am included in this process.
So maybe I'll begin and we can together with Ivan continue and see how conversation flows. So the main idea of the call and the interview today is to discuss your vision of first of all, the approaches that we have suggested in the report. We don't necessarily need to discuss the report in details. It's just a kind of catalyzing material for us. It is your approach and your vision. And we wanted to discuss two things there. We suggest some focal points of attention for transformation of educational systems. And we suggest certain pathway for transformation, that it should happen through the networks of laboratories that will work together, turn into social movements. Maybe it will be supported by some governments, businesses, it's okay. It can be both the system level and the network level. But the main idea is that without such a momentum from the grassroots movements, the thing will not happen, the transformation will not happen. So these are the key ideas, but we wanted to discuss how you see it, first of all, from the perspective of your experience, especially with structured democratic dialogue and other processes that you try to mobilize these communities, these leaders, young leaders, senior leaders, to bring the change. And you have a lot of experience as this catalyzer and a change maker yourself. So what do you think of what we suggested? Are we heading the right way? Shall we bring some more elements into this picture and so on?
Yeah. I would begin the conversation by focusing on what you just said a minute ago, that it is in reality an interaction between the formal system and the informal system. Unfortunately for us as active citizens, we alone cannot make the transformation. It requires a good interplay between the actual system, the governments themselves, and the conservative, I would say in quotes, a global educational system and related approaches, but an interaction with the progressive powers, with those who demand the transformation, who are mostly the younger generation, but also those who are actually benefiting or will benefit from such a transformation, who are organized groups like NGOs or universities, as well as for-profit organized groups like high-tech companies, because they need the transformation. So to summarize, I think as a good beginning for our conversation is the need to keep a balance between mobilizing the actual formal system to change and mobilizing those who envision the change and need the change to create the necessary energy and pressure in an interplay with the system to achieve that change. So criticizing our work, this means that we alone probably will have a lot of difficulty changing the system globally unless we include a significant angle of intervention that reaches the formal system. And when I say the formal system, I would focus on the legislation, that is parliament, ministries of education, and government as a whole, depending on the country and the system of governance of each country. So I don't know if you would like to intervene at any moment and interrupt me, but I can continue talking about this interplay. That, for example, engaging those who can actually change the legislation is very difficult, because in our experience, and I'm not talking only about my small country, but also bigger countries like the United States or Russia, the people who are in the parliament, those who have the power of legislation, are usually not very knowledgeable about what we are talking about. They need to be educated. And of course, they are usually very busy and permit me to also use the term arrogant in accepting help to educate themselves. So the only plausible approach is to engage them by inviting them to participate in events where, like the Living Labs and the Futuria that we are organizing, in which they can experience for themselves the power of this transformative energy. Now, ministries of education, they are the decision makers, they can make the change, but usually they don't really have the power to make significant change. Actually, what we want them to do is to reduce control. There is enough energy in the system to change, because the younger educators and the learners themselves, they have an enormous energy for creativity and for modifying the system and transforming the system, only if we let them do it. So we are not really expecting or requesting the ministries to make some active adjustment or change. All we need is their releasing of the energy, giving initiatives to their own people to experiment. Nothing can go wrong. You know, there is this schizophrenia about control. Control is something that could be used until the 19th century, maybe the 20th century. But on the turn of the millennium, the term of control has to be re-evaluated. We can no longer control our futures. We can facilitate going to the right direction. We can encourage, but we have to let go of our need to control everything. We cannot control it. By the way, that was one of the important observations in the manifesto that me and 11 other people were invited by the European Commission a couple of years ago to come up with a manifesto with a small number of issues that could guide our ways of life in the hyper-connected world. So control is one of them. Let go of control. So focusing now on the Ministry of Education again, what we have to encourage them to do is to liberate the kids and their teachers. The governments, in most countries, unfortunately, I would say, they are still very hierarchical. There are many countries that are governed by a single person, but the tendency for this individual person to hold a lot of powers is increasing. I mean, we have very, very good examples happening on the planet right now, even in Russia, in Korea, in the United States of America, in Turkey, where a lot of power is being continuously concentrated in one person. Now, if this person is a good dictator, like, for example, some people say the dictator of Dubai, then everything is good. Because if this person is a good visionary, then we are in good hands. But probably this is not the best way to go. But if we have countries in which we have such leaders, maybe it's very easy and fast to approach these leaders. And if they have a vision, then everything might go fast. If they don't have a vision, then we are in trouble. So in the long run, we need to consider also this. So to summarize, it's an interplay between the formal system and the informal system. And for the informal system to intervene, needs to focus on the legislation, on the ministries of education, and on the leadership itself. And there are different ways to approach it. Like I said, legislation, we need to engage them so that they can learn. Ministries of education, we need to find ways to encourage them to let go of their need to control everything. And leaders, identify those who are visionaries and partner with them. Is that enough for an introduction about your first question?
Yes, and if I may ask here, what's your view about people or groups who are able to do such work? Because it's a tremendous amount of, let's say, facilitation work that is required to establish dialogues between people that frequently don't like each other and don't like to talk to each other. So to actually pull them into the same space and establishing common grounds for their discussion and collaboration already requires a lot of energy. So first of all, who are those people who are able to do it? And second, how they would be kind of, I don't know, supported by the system or by the society, in your view?
Yeah, this is a much more difficult question. It requires really powerful movements that somehow, using the modern word of viral, they go viral, meaning that they create seeds, they start seeds in multiple countries, multiple locations, and the number of people expands, so that also the way these movements are being viewed by the others changes, and they are more respectful and more fearful of their capabilities. So it's a two-way. It's a thing that has two angles. One angle is to try to approach the system, the formal system we're talking about now, using some of our members who might have access. The other is to create pressure on the system by either exposing it or by leaving it behind. You see, we live in a world where a lot of things are going to be left behind. Sometimes there are transformations that take place that simply kill the existing system or abandon it. Like, for example, libraries have one day disappeared because Amazon started selling books online, or CD-ROM manufacturing industries disappeared because Steve Jobs and some other people decided to go CD-ROM free and go to iPods and other technologies. So the same is going to happen, in my view, with governments and with educational systems. It's just a matter of time. It's not very far away, that day. So if they don't change in time, they will be left behind. Now, how will this happen? Today, we are here to talk more about the education, but the education, it's embedded into the other systems of governance in general. So it's not really unrelated. I mean, it's going to happen more or less simultaneously, I would say, the falling or the passing over of society, of governments, and the transformation of the educational system. They would be more or less simultaneous, in the sense that governments now, they think they have a lot of power because they are concentrating powers and decision making in general on a few number of representatives whom the system, the people, cannot hold responsible for their choices and actions after they elect them. So this is a major problem of the system of representation that needs to be solved. And technology is going to solve it, simply because there are ways to see every decision they make, co-decide on every action, remove the support from one representative so that they lose their power to decide for us. There are 1,000 ways of changing this system. So it's just a matter of time until the people understand it, the technology matures to allow this to happen. And when that happens, we're going to have a completely different system. Now, in a parallel universe, or in the same universe, but in a parallel part of that universe, the educational system is going to go through a similar transformation. Now, the educators and the Ministry of Education, they still think that they have control over the curriculum, over the kids, over the teachers, and so on. But in reality, they are losing it. They are losing that control. Not now, they started losing it at the turn of the millennium with the invasion of the computer in the classrooms and the internet. They lost a lot of control. It's like they had a classroom with 4 walls and everything was closed, and there was a bookshelf on the corner with books and some teacher who knew everything. And now these books disappear and there is a computer screen that goes outside, and the teacher loses power because any kid can double check his knowledge. So he's not the person anymore who knows everything. Kids question the knowledge extent of the teacher, and that was 15 years ago. Now it's even worse. In Cyprus and in some other countries, they are trying to stop it by making some new mythology now that the Wi-Fi is dangerous and they should stop the Wi-Fi in schools because they have microwaves or whatever, or they want to prohibit kids from having devices because then they use their mobile devices to go get. All this is not going to work out. The truth is that this mobile device is an extension of my brain. And as an extension of my brain, nobody wants to leave it behind. 3-year-olds, they know it already. When you give them 5 toys, they immediately get the technology one. They feel it, that it's an extension of their brain. So they're going to lose that game. It's just a matter of time and a matter of the conditions with which they will lose that game. Whether they are going to make a compromise and change with society, or whether they're going to be left completely behind and something else will take over. So in my view, there is not a game for which we are in a fight that we might lose or win. It's 100% sure that society will win that game. The formal system can only delay it or make it painful for them. So I think they will understand that increasingly, and they will choose, I hope, to jump in the change rather than resisting to the change. Now, I want to make a parenthesis here. This is my hope, but it's not my belief. Because honestly, we see repetitively systems crashing when they don't really need to crash, if they only could understand the power of transformation. Let's talk about your country. There was no need to have a complete crash and lose everything that was good in the previous political system. But people couldn't see that, and they couldn't embrace Gorbachev's vision for a transformation, and they make an abrupt change from one system to the other. This is an extreme case. I mean, it has some political implications, and people might refuse to see it the way I see it. But I can use another example that is easier to see. You have a company now in the capitalistic world that is not profitable enough, and it needs to make some transformations, maybe needs to pay them less or release some people and introduce more technology in order to survive. And its employees are going into demonstrations and strikes, and they don't want something to change. What is the end effect? Company goes bankrupt, everybody loses their job. So it seems that people are missing collective intelligence and collective wisdom to understand that if they don't find a way to collaborate and compromise and find a better solution, they will lose it all. So like I said, it's my hope that the system will transform, but based on observations of the past, probably it will crash.
Also, do you see the risk in hijacking, because you emphasize the role of technologies in this transformation? Do you see the risk that because the way that technological at the moment, what we see, for instance, in the case of Facebook and Google, how the corporate logic starts to hijack the dynamics, and do you see the risk in that such transformation will basically bring us to not into a more harmonious society, but into, let's say, something else? So the question I'm asking maybe not about that, but about putting too much bet on technology as a driver of this transformation.
This worries me a lot. I mean, your observation is absolutely correct. Technology is unfortunately controlled by a small number of corporations and even individuals and big capital. And we also know the 80-20 rule, which Parrot's rule is now maybe transforming into a 5-95 rule. Power concentrates continuously, whatever that might be, whether it's wealth or technology control. And that worries me a lot. Yes, they could. I like that you use the term hijack, because in reality they are hijacked. Because if we now be critical towards technology, is it nice that Amazon took over the bookstore business? No, because it was nice to go to my neighborhood bookstore and there was this lady who was knowledgeable about all the books. I could engage into some conversation with her. So it's a rapid transformation that is taking place. And unfortunately, it's not, I mean, that lady in the bookstore was a believer, was somebody who loved books, and she could discuss with me about books. Amazon is not a believer, it's a business enterprise, and they're not interested in helping me read the best books or understand the meanings of the books. They are only studying my behavior and the behaviors of others, and they want to maximize profit. So the fact that technology embedded within, we call it a capitalistic system, in parentheses, is what we have now is not capitalistic. I'm sorry. If you read if you go and read Adam Smith about capitalism, you are going to be thinking you are reading about communism, because what we have now is not capitalism. Parentheses closed. It's beyond that. I mean, this is really very dangerous what we have now. Parentheses closed. The danger is that the value system comes into play, because now the world is run only with one value, money. I mean, that's the only thing we measure, is money. And the other is individualistic, is how much money do you have, not how much money your team has or your country has or whatever. It's individual. So I am worried as much as you are that yes, they will hijack the system unless we change two things. One is democratization to the access of technology in a more general perspective. And the second is that we need to change the value system. We need to change, and that's where education comes into play. We need to really make people understand what are we as humans? What is our central value? What is the thing that we need to measure? And we are measuring the wrong things, both in society and in education. So now I will move into these two wrong things that we are measuring. In society, we are measuring with money. For example, we could easily break this if we are measuring by happiness. There is a lot of efforts around the world to develop an index of happiness, because happiness and GDP are not related. Sometimes it's the other way around. So we need more work there when we talk about countries and societies in general on what is the measure of being human in a hyper-connected world. But that's not the focus of our discussion today. Our focus is education. So moving now the same kind of discussion into the arena of education, what we need to discuss here is the measurement, the assessment, and this is an important part of the report as well, and I'm happy that it's included so extensively. It's all wrong, because what we are measuring in education has no relation to what we need in the real life. We are measuring, for example, what we call the IQ. So what is the IQ? How fast you can rotate in your brain some abstract objects, or how fast you can tell me which is the next number that comes in a series of numbers, or how fast you can give me a synonym or a meaning of a word. This is like I'm measuring the ability of the computer to be fast. How fast, how much memory, the CPU speed, whatever. Now I want to remind you that Yuri Gagarin went to outer space with computers that had a couple of kilohertz CPU speed time and maybe 1 megabyte of memory. I don't know, megabyte, maybe I'm overestimating. Maybe
just a single smartphone capability. The whole mission was on the same calculating ability as the current smartphone.
No, I don't think so. I think this smartphone is 1,000,000 times more complicated than the mission of Yuri Gagarin. Honestly, it's about the
Gagarin, right? But I'm talking about Apollo mission to the moon.
Apollo mission and so on. Yes, you're right. So this means that it's not about cognitive power. It's about some other skills or abilities to use that power. So the same way the vision of Russia in the 60s and America in the 70s to conquer space, the vision, I mean, it was also part of the Cold War, okay, I understand that, but there was also a vision that we have to go and search for other life, for life outside our planet, to find something bigger, some meaning in our existence. This vision was more important than the power of the computers at that time. So the same thing applied to education. It means that it's meaningless to measure the cognitive ability of a brain. What we need to measure is the skills or the abilities that matter in creating a future that is humane and where humans will be the ones who will survive, or whatever we call humans. And to do that, people talk about it a lot, but they don't really do anything in the educational system. I mean, we started talking about a decade or 2 decades ago about the importance of emotional intelligence. Or later we started talking about teamwork or about creativity. But believe me, they are all empty words, because we talk about them, and we introduce some concepts in the educational system, but they are not in the core. They have to be in the core of the belief system of the educational system if we are going to change it. So we have to go away from the individualistic learning and measurement to the group learning and measurement. And this requires a complete change of the system. And they are not going to do it in the educational systems, but we will do it by creating examples of success. For example, why do companies succeed? Because they use the collective skills of many of their employees. They have a designer, a programmer, a manager, a financial person, and they don't have somebody who knows everything. It's the combination, and the business world managed to find the way to make them collaborate. They know how to collaborate. They know that this is my area and I need to interact with you. I have an API, they call it in computer science, my interface with you. So we need to understand that this has to start early in life in the educational system. So this means that we have to move away from giving individual tasks to giving group tasks, and let the group resolve it. Let the group take over the tasks and decide that this time I'll be the designer and you will be the thinker and you will be the observer and I will be the tester and so on. In another project, the roles should change. I mean, we cannot keep the same roles throughout life, because then kids will not develop. But kids know that. You know, my experience with Cyber Kids, which was an experiment that took place 20 years ago, is that it was all project oriented. And we have kids 6 to 9 years old. Every project was different. And the projects, of course, they were not defined by us, but by the kids themselves. We were just stimulating them to choose an interesting project. The group would emerge depending on the project and on their interest at that point in time, or their skills or whatever, they would assume some roles without really saying, I will do this, I will take this role, and you will take the other role. But we, as educators, we need to create the conditions that all this happens automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So, in sum, just to go back to your original question, yes, I am very worried that technologists and business people might hijack the system, and they can hijack it because they have the means. And the danger here is that with the current state of affairs and the ways of measurement of success, which is money and individual ability, we are moving towards a very dark future. So being afraid is the beginning of the transformation. What we need to do is to design examples and methods that take us away from such a negative future, such a dark future, into a positive future, which, for example, focuses on other values and also focuses on collective abilities and collective success. I'll give you another criticism to the educational system. I mean, in many countries now, they are introducing teams and group projects. Even in elementary schools, they put the desks, 4 desks together, and kids sit around and they are collaborating. But at the end of the year, they give them a certificate with an individual score. Now, this is madness. I mean, we did it together, but I get my score and you get a different score. Mm-hmm. You should cancel these scores. You should give them a collective score, or at least give them 2 scores. Give them a score for their individual performance, and give them a score for their performance within the group. Mm-hmm. That might be the beginning of a change, But in the long run, it's more important what you can do with others than what you can do with yourself. Because we don't exist in a vacuum. We are always with others. Mm-hmm.
So if I understand you correctly, what you suggest is that among the 4 focal points that we are suggesting, you emphasize more collective dimension, first of all, and the role of new types of metrics of success, including dimension in metrics of success that would basically stimulate all forms of collaboration.
Yes, to give you, yes, I am of course biased because I spent a significant part of my life, about 10 years, working in this project we call Cyber Kids, in which I focused on team building and team projects. And also now I'm focusing on structured democratic dialogue, which is a methodology that is again harnessing the collective intelligence and the collective wisdom. So I am biased, I have to accept that. And that's why I am focusing, but I'm focusing on this collective idea. But to ground it more on the educational system, let me extend a little bit my thought on how we can practically introduce these concepts into a classroom. Let's start from the old system where you had the instructor or the teacher and the kids. And now, about 20 years ago, we started the discussion about child-centered education or role reversal, giving more power to the child. That was 20 years ago, and it is still in the literature today as if that is the solution to many problems. This is outdated. I mean, we did this in Cyber Kids 20 years ago, and it was good for 20 years ago. Today, we need something much bigger than that. We need the same person, the same learner, to change roles all the time. So the kid is a learner, or the adult, whoever, somebody is a learner. And of course, in that aspect, this person has to be recipient of something, okay? Has to learn. So you need to have some knowledge around and some methodology that will allow you to interact with that knowledge in a way that you will acquire more data and more skills in relation to that knowledge. That's the old system. Now, we all know that the best way to learn something is to teach it. That's why those who teach others or help others, they are better students. This is an observation that needs to become part of the system. So we have to design an educational system in which every learner has also a role in teaching others, younger kids, for example, or classmates. Why did I say younger? Because that's another constraint and limitation of the current educational system. We separate them by biological age. This is so artificial. In real life, we are not learning from our same age peers. We are learning from a kid 3 years old or from a grandpa 90 years old. We are interacting with people of different ages all the time. This is how we learn. In this artificial construction we call schools, you cannot interact for 8 hours a day with people of a window of 12 months of age with you. That's completely wrong. So you have to have in the system an obligatory angle of everyone being a teacher of somebody else. Then, what about mentorship? Mentorship is a very important thing. Now, mentorship comes now in play and in discussion as the teacher should be more like a mentor or a facilitator. Now, again, this is like 20 years ago. That, you could say that 20 years ago. Today, we need the kid to be the mentor of another kid. You need to learn mentorship when you are still very young. Again, the other thing that is changing. Somebody brings me a book. I have a book in school, and this book is like gold. You know, this is the book that the Ministry of Education gave me. What about developing my own book? I have to be an author of a book. I mean, we have to take away the mystery of a book. So we cannot write a whole book, but we have to be creators. So, I mean, they say that YouTube allows you to create because you can create your movie. Yeah, that's a good start. Or you can write something on the internet, in a blog. That's a good start. But again, that's outdated. What we really need is an environment where kids can really create and be authors of something that is complete. Not as individuals, as a group. Sometimes I'm more than an author than you, and sometimes you are more a designer of the book, and so on. Now, the other thing, the other aspect in learning that should be included is produce something tangible. I mean, in schools, kids never produce anything. In real life, it's all about products. I mean, we as humans, we produce more products than God created. I mean, if you count the number of objects, living or non-living, that God created, I don't really know the number, but we can Google it. It's a huge number. I mean, I'm not now counting the stars because that's infinite. I'm talking about on Earth, the number of species, and then, yeah, something like that. It's a big number. But we as humans, we are creating products all the time in different models and different versions of the same product and so on. But kids don't produce anything. So we have to bring backwards in time this ability to be creator and producer of something that makes it outside the classroom. It can only be a cart, for example, a cart of my business.
And also empower them to actually do it. So it's not, so people are often feel kind of deprived. There is when you talk about this idea of democratization of technology, part of the story seems to be that we need to engage people with technologies to show them it's not something that only specialists can do, that basically everyone can do it. Like everyone can be a software developer, everyone can develop their own robot, everyone can do chemistry, everyone can do biology, biohacking, whatever. I mean, all the modern technologies and also practical skills like crafts, so people can use their hands and not only their brain to do stuff.
Exactly. That's the key point, that they have to be convinced themselves that they can do it. And the best way to be convinced is by producing something that others will look at and use outside the classroom. In CyberKids 20 years ago, one of the projects we had, for example, was to create your own business. So we had a group of, say, 3 or 4 kids. They had to create a business. So they could maybe imagine that they are creating a kiosk in the school to sell drinks and snacks, okay? So they had to make a design, so drawings, they had to make some cash flow, how much they will sell and so on. Then they have to give it a name, they have to make a logo, then they have to make a card, they have to make a letterhead. So by producing this card and the letterhead and the drawings that are being viewed by others, that's a tangible product. And I'm talking something so simplistic that we did 20 years ago. Today, like you mentioned, we can produce robots, we can produce software, we can produce mobile apps that go to stores, we can produce a lot. And it's important to feel, to conquer that feeling of being a creator. I remember an interview of the guy who created Second Life, a very interesting interview. He said that as a kid, he was dreaming about building doors and houses and so on. And that was his drive to create Second Life, an environment where you can build a house, change the door instantaneously, speed of light. It makes you, in a way, feel like God, that you think of something and you create it. This is a very, very nice feeling, the feeling of creating. Yes.
And not just being creative in an imaginary space, but in actual physical space. There is a big, in my opinion, what schools actually create, there is a big gap between doing an exercise in a safe space and actually going to life and do something real that you can kind of hope.
Get out of the classroom. Absolutely. You have to get out of the classroom. Actually, we used to call it extracurricular activities or schools out. So activities that happen outside the classroom. So
but the idea is maybe we need a much more significant movement of, so to say, school opening up to the society, where people try to work with real life issues and not just abstract, specially constructed learning situations.
You know, I gave a nice talk a couple of years ago in Africa, in a regional conference about innovations in education in Kenya. And I showed some very nice drawings that I made about the schools, the different phases of schools. And the last phase, the phase we are now, requires not only one wall to be broken so that kids have a connection to the outside world, but it requires all 4 walls to break apart. Kids to go outside of school and have learning experiences, for example, in NGOs, in other countries, in companies, whatever, on the street, sit outside in nature and interact with nature. And also outsiders to come inside the school and be the teachers. I mean, the kids cannot be exposed only on one teacher. This teacher should invite every now and then a medical doctor, a garbage collector, some real people to share, to do some real projects with the kids inside the classroom or outside the classroom. So the world, the school, let's put it the classroom, has to completely connect with the world. And that's probably the key to the last point that we left out from our discussion, the development of social responsibility. Because all these abilities have no value and they exist in a vacuum if we don't cultivate at the same time the reason why it's important to do certain things. I mean, kids have to realize from a very old age the meaning of sustainability, of what is human and what is not human, and our responsibility towards our environment, whether that environment is other kids or is our school or is nature. And nature includes also the technological nature itself. So,
Yiannis, I'm conscious about time, and I have a couple of very specific proposals to you. Actually, I'm very interested in everything we discuss, and I want to kind of create more situations for us to be able to dive into this deeper. But before I kind of offer you this couple of invitations, can I ask Ivan if he has something to ask in addition to what has been discussed?
Yep. This question I have is about like your vision for the universities. You're a person who's been involved in science work a lot. So like in this transformation process, what is your vision? What is the role for university? Does it have a place in this future at all?
Yeah, this is a very difficult, a much more difficult question for me because, as you know, I left academia almost 20 years ago. So I was a university professor for only a couple of years, 4 years in total, and then I quit and went into real life and started this cyber kids experiment with young kids. So I didn't stay in academia long enough in order to actually interact with the system and have some legitimate visions for universities. So I didn't really develop them to such an extent, or they might not be as valid as if they would have been if I have stayed in the system for, let's say, another 20 years. But I will dare respond to your question, okay? So I'm just making this qualification so that I'm not misunderstood. The way universities are developing now is not bad in the sense that they are trying to connect with the real world when it comes to the business world. So they are producing, now I'm going to become sarcastic and critical, they are producing screws and soldiers for a system that already exists. So we have an already existing system that says, I need an accountant, I need a software programmer, I need a designer. So this is not a good business because there is not, they are not producing visionaries who are going to change the system into a better system. They are producing little soldiers that fit in a bigger machinery. And I'm not happy with that. That was, I mean, and it gets crazier and crazier. For example, I have friends in the United States where I was a professor many years ago who are still there, and I visit them a couple of times a year, so I know exactly what is going on. And I'll give you an extreme example. Medical school, that's where I was, medical school. Instead of producing doctors who have an open mind and they can diagnose a disease and they can think of all the possibilities that can go wrong and be really grounded on their intuition and their knowledge, their curriculum is dictated by the National Health Association to be multiple choice answers to specific questions. So they are not producing doctors who have an open mind. And the professors, and there are many good professors, like my friends are still there. They want to teach their own thing. They want to teach the to-be medical doctors to think first and then answer, but they don't have the time and they don't have the permission because the university tells them, look, you have to teach them how to get a good score in the exam because a good score will bring us more money from NIH. So this means that the feedback that the universities are connected with the system out there, and the system out there has the wrong measurements, again, like education in the younger ages. What they measure is wrong, is about money again. So instead of producing good medical doctors, you are producing students who perform good in tests so that they can get to the best university, so that your university will be more attractive to new prospective students. So you will increase the number of students and thus increase your budget. So this is all wrong, you know. But the worst is that at the end of the day, even if you do everything right, what you are producing is screws and pieces of equipment that fit in an existing machinery. So you will never change the machinery that way. So it's like a system that will be stable, yeah, it will be stable and maybe survive forever, but we're not going to develop as humans. So this is my biggest criticism of universities. So we have to cut the loop that universities produce pieces of machinery that fit into the existing machinery.
So basically, again, metrics of success is a challenge here.
Yes. And of course, we cannot change it easily. Therefore, maybe what we should do is create parallel universities, challenge what university is. I mean, you see, society has accepted that university is like high school. It's a continuation of high school. This is all wrong. I mean, when I was being trained in conflict resolution, I had a wonderful trainer. Unfortunately, she's now dead. She used to use a term called recenter. So when you lose your center, try to recenter. Now, since the center of many of the things we are discussing are found in ancient Athens of the golden era of Pericles, if we recenter to those years, to ancient Greece, the schools, they were being informal, co-working with philosophers. So you were a student of Socrates, you were a student of Hippocrates. By being with them, so it was, you were equal, you were all the time with your mentor. So, and there was no beginning and end. They wouldn't say, now you are finished, you know, you graduated. So universities now became like a box that has 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We define what you have to learn, and then you get the graduation, and then you get the certificate, and then you are done. I mean, that's all wrong. So we have to begin by challenging the definition of university or postgraduate, post-school education. I mean, it started already to be challenged with the concept of informal education, but not enough, because, you know, they make it sound like there are two parallel paths. There is the formal and the informal path. That's all rubbish, if you allow me to use that provocative term. There is no formal and informal education. There is only one education that's going on. So universities as they are today, they have to change. So we have to dilute them, or we have to create parallel ways of certifying people and showing that they can be equally successful or even more successful, and also focusing developing new types of curricula that focus on humanistic values and on unknown futures. Now we are producing graduates for a known future, which is the future of yesterday. We have to develop graduates who are brave enough to walk into an unknown future and co-design it and envision it and try to make it real. So I don't know if I satisfied your question.
Excellent.
I'm perfectly satisfied. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, just as a note.
Your interruption.
Yeah. Yeah, as a note on that, we started to use the idea that universities need to prepare people for complex society, and the complex society is by definition less predictable than the existing society. Yeah. And so we call it complex person, and the ideas of managing complexity. But the managing complexity, like you said previously when you were talking about control, you cannot really manage it, you cannot control it, you can encourage, facilitate. So these are a different set of skills, rather than looking at it as an old-fashioned way of trying to control everything and predict and to some boxes. We need to one of you may also have seen it in the report in the last chapter that we discuss the idea of bringing back the organic metaphors of how we think. We move from machine type of metaphors towards organic metaphors such as forest or coral reef, ecosystem, organism. So everything that is much more sophisticated. So you cannot really tell these sophisticated things how to do this stuff. You can only interact with them and guide them, but not program them to the very last point. They're too complex for that.
Yes, we already have the science. I mean, we have science that goes back more than 50 years ago, which we have not exploited yet sufficiently. Like, for example, the science of self-organization and of networking and of open systems in cybernetics and so on. So we do have science to rely on. And more recently, we have the science that I'm working with, the science of dialogic design, which allows multiple nodes to dynamically interact with them and search for a common ground and the emergence of decisions that are grounded in collective wisdom rather than on popular voting, for example. So we do have science to use, and we also have intuitive science, because believe it or not, good science is always intuitive science. I used to have a colleague, a professor, when I was in the United States as an acting academician, who used to ask always a very difficult question to our visitors who were invited to give a lecture. He was asking whether their hypothesis or the statistics that they were showing, whether his grandmother could understand it. And his point was that my grandmother cannot really feel it or understand it, it means it's not good science. And I completely agree with that notion. It's not about statistical. Statistics will prove it, you know? Good science is obvious, is intuitive. I know there is a contra-intuitive science called quantum theory and quantum mechanics now, but we're working on it. I think it's not intuitive yet because we didn't manage to find the right angle to look at it, or because we grew up in a world that is only three-dimensional and too restricted, and we are constrained from looking at it. So don't use an example against me. But going back to your question, yes, I think that we need to use these more organic approaches to human interactions that are not only organic, but also grounded on science, like I said. We use, we have to design systems that allow them to flourish, these organic approaches. Because now we don't allow them to flourish. Like, for example, the way we started our discussion today was with systems of governance, where big numbers of individuals select their representatives. And then there is no connecting feedback between me giving my powers away to a representative, but have no means of controlling or withdrawing my support unless 5 years pass and he's corrupted. And then my only choice is not to punish him, but to choose somebody else, which makes no sense to me. So in a more organic system, this will be dynamic, like in nature. In nature, everything is dynamic. I mean, if I don't get water today, I will dry as a plant. It's not like I can get it tomorrow. So everything is in real time and it's dynamic. So as more and more real time and dynamic relations come into play in education and in governance and in all aspects of our ways of interacting with one another, the system will become more organic. And in a more organic system, I don't know if we need to design it for harnessing collective wisdom, or if this is an emerging property that will come into play by itself. You know, this is a more complicated discussion. It goes a little bit into the lines of ethics and beliefs and maybe even religion, whether the good out of people gradually comes out, or whether there is no good and bad in the universe, and we need to design it. Personally, I don't want to take that risk. I mean, I don't want to engage into that discussion. I prefer not to take that risk. I prefer to discuss what constraints should we put into the system so that we make sure that the good powers prevail. So we design for good, for a good system, not discuss about whether it's going to happen or whether it's not going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Yiannis. And I wanted to conclude with a couple of more specific invitations that hopefully will make our connection working in some concrete ways in next few months, if possible. So one of them is that I wanted to introduce you to the group that we are now actively partnering with. It was initiated by, I don't remember if you met, I think you met Ross Hall last year in Prague, right?
Yes, I met him, yes.
Yes, so Ross, since that time, he actually started to create what is called Global Change Leaders Collaborative. Because they're speaking on behalf of Ashoka, and Ashoka is a very big network in 100.
My daughter works there, if you remember.
Huh?
She works at the.
Okay, so the point is that they are now creating this collaborative, which will engage chain leaders all over the world. In that it would be good to actually invite you to be part of that collaborative. I'm helping Ross to create it. We making a number of strong partnerships with him, especially because the emphasis is on system collective intelligence as a vehicle, so to say, for this.
Pavel? Pavel?
I lost you.
Pavel, do you hear me? Yiannis?
I hear you, but I don't hear Pavel.
Yeah, we lost Pavel.
Can you send him a chat?
Hello?
Yep.
Yiannis?
Pavel is back. Yiannis, Pavel is back.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I was lost for a moment. Hello? Yiannis?
Yes.
Yes. I was frozen for a moment, right?
Yes.
My connection went off.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is
And now we lost him completely. Okay, let's do it this way.
Just for the record, the answer to his first invitation is definitely yes. In case we don't get him back, I'm also starting a new experiment here in Cyprus, and in the next 1 or 2 months, I'm going to extend invitations to get to your groups in general, but more specifically also to some individuals to collaborate with that. Is he back?
No, Pavel is back.
Yes,
I'm looking forward to your invitation. Well,
I cannot hear him.
yeah, I think he will.
Pavel?
Pavel, you are back.
We see you.
Yiannis?
Yes?
Do you see us?
Yiannis?
Yes? I see you. I see you and I hear you.
Yiannis.
Мы тебя слышим. We hear you.
Okay, I'm back. Yes?
Yes.
I don't hear and see myself. Okay. So, first thing, let me introduce you to Ross. Let me introduce you to this collaborative and to establish this connection. And there'll be a number of meetings in the autumn and winter where I think bringing you to this network will be a fantastic connection, which will allow your ideas to flourish there and connect with communities around the world. That's invitation number one.
While you were away, I said, just for the record, to Ivan that it's an honor, and of course the answer is yes, and I would love to do it.
I'll second thing is also there. I think there is a great opportunity for us to reconnect. You remember also Tony McKay and Valerie Hannon from our meetings of this Global Education Leaders Partnership. One is Australian, the other one is British.
Yes, I remember.
So making a large international conference in the beginning of November here in Moscow.
Okay.
And it will discuss many of the things that you are bringing up. And I think that your experience, again, could be a fantastic complement to this group. So if you can make time and come there.
Do you have the exact date?
It's 1st to 3rd of November.
It's not ideal because I am hosting a training here in Institute, but I could come 2 days.
Come.
I mean, send me the exact details. I could come I could come on the 1st and leave on the 3rd.
Okay, I got it.
So
okay, we can make it. We can make a try. At least I think what is important that you will be in the gathering, you will connect with other people, and because again, this is a big international network, I think it's a great opportunity, and there will be also a lot of people from Russia who will, who are the leaders, who will listen to the ideas and who will try to make it into real life projects. So I think it's again, it will be to be transformative.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Okay.
Is there so if I come, is there a possibility for me also to give a talk or do something tangible?
Well, we're definitely gonna do tangible things. So it's not only like a conference; it's more like a collaboration.
Okay, like a laboratory.
That what I want you to bring into, there will be a session on digital literacies, which is not exactly on literacies, it's more about how we interact with the digital society. And I would like to offer you to be one of catalyzers for the session, to share your experience. So it's not really a big talk like a 2 hours keynote, but it will be the session where you can engage a lot with other people that work in this direction.
Okay. I will plan it from now so that I can come. Okay.
Okay. So these are two very specific invitations, but I'm gonna have more. But let's start with these, and we are now like let's say in a different phase than what we have seen about a year ago. Kind of crystallizes in a number of very specific projects. Because we finished this report, we are finishing it now, there is a kind of a lot of clarity, what we need to do and where are the focal points. And we want to concentrate only on those focal points and don't do everything.
Okay.
So that's, in that regard, I think we will find a lot of possibilities for connecting.
Okay. I was telling Ivan while you were out that I'm also starting another experiment here in Cyprus. In about a month from now, I will launch it. Similar to what I did 20 years ago with CyberKids, but in the new era. So I am trying to make some space available where I will have like an experimental classroom and the first students to experiment with practical curricula on these concepts that we have discussed. So I would like to invite some of you to be advisors or part of it. We will define the roles as we go.
Well, thank you. I'll be delighted.
All right.
And I think, yes. Okay.
Looking forward.
Okay.
I would propose.
Okay, Yiannis, thank you very much.
To end now, yes.
Thank you, guys. We will talk soon again.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.